In this video, I want to share with you my stats and scores that got me into Columbia Business School for my full-time MBA program. I already finished my MBA back in 2021 and there is my Columbia diploma on top of the wall. Since I applied and got accepted to Columbia, there haven't been any major changes to the application process, so whatever I'll tell you in this video is still highly relevant. I want to break this video into the following sections. First, I'll give you some background about myself, my education, and my work experiences at the time of my applications. This will give you a good sense about who I was and what I was doing when I was applying to MBA programs. Then I'll give you my stats and scores, and we can compare them with the stats and scores of the average students that got accepted to Columbia this year. If that sounds good to you, let's get started. So let's start with some relevant background about me at the time of my applications. I was 24 years old living in New York City. I always wanted to get an MBA, so at that time I started researching and visiting the schools I was planning to apply to. At the time, I was also working for a Big Four accounting firm, PwC, in New York City for approximately 3 years. Before getting my full-time job at PwC, I was a full-time college student at University of Evansville, which is a small college in Indiana. One thing that a lot of MBA applicants don't realize is that top-tier programs favor applicants that speak multiple languages. When I applied to MBA programs, I put 6 languages into my applications. A couple of the languages were the ones I spoke fluently since the childhood, and others were the ones I took in high school or college. When you apply to MBA programs, you can usually specify the level of your fluency from beginner, intermediate, advanced, and fluent. So if you're a bilingual or speak multiple languages, definitely don't hold it back in your resume or applications. Also, one part of the application is that MBA programs ask you about your achievements and certifications. When I was working for PwC, I was able to get my CPA license, which I think also helped me in my applications. So this is a good high-level background about me and where I was coming from at the time of applying to top MBA programs. Now let's chat about my stats. The easiest way to go about it is to look at the average stats for recently accepted students at Columbia and then compare my stats against them. Let's switch the screen to my laptop and go with that now. So let's go on Google and type Columbia MBA class profile. And let's click on the first link. This website will give you all the information about who Columbia ended up admitting this year. And if you're interested in other MBA programs like Harvard, Wharton, or Stanford, you can Google their program name and type MBA class profile to get similar stats about their accepted students. Alright, now let's first start with the first 2 paragraphs here where Columbia Business School tells you about what type of students they are looking for. So in the first paragraph, it says that Columbia Business School looks for intellectually driven people from diverse educational, economic, social, cultural, and geographic backgrounds. So you don't have to be a part of any specific background to get into Columbia. The more diverse your background is, the better. And the next sentence here says that our students share a record of achievement, strong leadership, and the ability to work in teams. So as you're applying to MBA programs, make sure that these things stand out in your applications. And the next paragraph here states that Columbia Business School does not discriminate based on the following. Alright, so now let's start with the MBA student profile of the class entering in 2023. So the first line here is the applications received, and Columbia got 5,895 applications in total this year. Out of 5,895 applications, Columbia enrolled 900 students and divided them into 12 different clusters. The enrolled number here, which is 900, is the number of students that actually ended up joining Columbia this year. But Columbia most likely ended up accepting more students, some of which decided to go with other programs or not pursue MBA at this time at all. But if we pull the calculator and try to get the ratio of enrolled to number of applications, so 900 divided by 5,895, we'll see that approximately 15% of applicants got admitted and then enrolled into the program. The next 2 lines here split the number of enrolled students into the January or August entry class. So Columbia has something called a J-term program, which is an expedited MBA program. And the August entry is the normal MBA program that lasts 2 years. So both of these programs graduate at the same exact time, but January program just starts a bit later. You'll see that the August entry has 681 students compared to 219 students in January. And that's because the students that get into the August entry class want the summer off to pursue internships and other interests, while the January term have their second semester during the summer. Usually people that apply to January term are either entrepreneurs or sponsored by their companies, so they don't need an internship during the summer. I actually applied to be a part of the traditional 2-year program starting in August because I wanted to have my summer off and pursue internships because I wanted to switch an industry. So now let's move into the next couple couple of lines here about the GMAT scores. You'll see that the average GMAT score for an admitted applicant at Columbia was 730 this year. And my GMAT score was actually also exactly 730. So I was right in the average of GMAT scores when I was applying to the MBA programs. In the next line here, Columbia tells you the full range of admitted applicants and their scores. So you'll see that the lowest accepted score was 610 and the highest GMAT score was 790 out of 800 total. I would take these scores with a grain of salt, especially the low 610. It could be that Columbia accepted one student with that score who had otherwise a very untraditional and unique background. So if you have a GMAT score that's also very low, similar to 610 here, I would highly encourage you to retake the test and get a higher score, or make sure that your background is very unique compared to the average MBA applicant. And the next line here is actually very helpful in understanding the GMAT scores. It tells you the scores of the successful 80% of the applicants and removes any exceptions from the list. So now you see that 80% of MBA applicants scored from 700 to 760. And if you're planning to apply to Columbia, I would encourage you to be in this range as well. Now let's focus on the undergraduate GPA, on the GPA that you had from back in college. So the average accepted applicants' GPA was 3.5, and the middle 80% of accepted students had from 3.2 all the way to 3.9 as a GPA. So my undergraduate GPA was actually 3.9. So I think I had an advantage because I was at the top of this range. But this GPA information can also be very subjective. Everyone understands that there are certain majors like engineering where it's harder to get a higher GPA score. So a 3.2 GPA for engineering could be the same as 3.9 for business, for example. Also, the GPA differs a lot based on the caliber of schools. For example, a 3.9 GPA from an Ivy League school will be ranked way higher than the 3.9 GPA from an unknown school. But this information is still very helpful when you're trying to understand whether or not you have a chance of getting admitted to your MBA programs. Alright, so now the next couple of lines here are about the work experience. Columbia MBA students on average have 5 years of work experience before starting their MBA program. I was on the lower side of this average because I had 4 years of work experience. But you'll see that the middle 80% of students have from 3 to 8 years of work experience. And 100% of students have at least 1 year of work experience right before starting. So Columbia Business School doesn't really accept you right after college. I think if you're planning to apply to Columbia Business School, anything from 4 to 6 years of work experience would be ideal. The next lines here are about the average age of the student starting the MBA program. So you'll see that the average age is 28 years old. The age range is from 22 to 40 years old. And the middle 80% of students were 26 to 31. At the time I started Columbia, I was 25 years old, so I was kind of also at the lower end of this range. And you'll see that 44% of accepted students were women, 47% of accepted students were international citizens, and 43% were minority of US origin. So the next table here shows the race and ethnicity of the accepted students, so you can review that if you would like. And here's an interesting chart that shows the undergraduate majors of accepted MBA applicants. So 35% of the accepted students come from business undergraduate degrees, 20% from economics, 17% from engineering, 11% from social sciences, 8% from sciences, 6% from humanities, 2% from technology, and then 1% with other. Since my undergraduate degree was in accounting, I would be a part of these business majors right here. And then Columbia Business School also tells you the previous industries before the MBA of accepted students. So you'll see that financial services is 29%, consulting is 21%, marketing is 12%, technology is 11%, other is 6%, then there's healthcare with 5%, military backgrounds with 5%, real estate with 5%, nonprofit with 3%, and energy with 2%. Because I used to work at PwC before my MBA, so it's an accounting firm, I think I would either be listed in the financial services sector here or in the consulting sector here, because a lot of people consider PwC to be a consulting firm. Similar to how I compared myself with the average accepted MBA applicants at Columbia, I would encourage you to do the same exact thing to any MBA programs that you are interested in. Also, feel free to comment any questions for me about MBA programs and I'll be happy to respond to you. Thank you for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one.